All right, how's it going, everyone? Today we're just going to go over some foam rolling basics and things to consider when you're doing so. I know it's pretty popular amongst a lot of people in different populations, and some people do it some ways and some people do it other ways, of course. And I just wanted to bring you my take on it so that way if you have one at home or you're considering buying one, you can have a few options to use and things to consider while doing so. With that said, we're just going to start with pretty much being in the same position that I am. So you're just sitting on the foam roller, right? And then from here, I'm gonna work from my glutes, basically down the legs. We'll kind of work a lot of different muscle groups on the way down, and then a couple things for the upper body too. So to start, if you're not familiar with how to get the glutes, and I'm just gonna assume you're not familiar with how to get a lot of these things for the purposes of the educational video, but to get the glutes, the way I like to start with this being my left hip, I'm actually gonna see if I can get my left hip to my right knee, and I'm just gonna roll out like so. A lot of you guys might be familiar with it, right? And if you are, so I'll also give you a side view there, just so we can kind of see what angles we're working with. Yeah, that's a good view as well, is that not only do we want to get back and forth here, but we also want to get a little bit of pitch change, as well as trying to get through different areas, different muscle fibers, getting into different areas of the same muscle group. So, as you can see, I'm kind of on my side here. And of course we would get both sides, right? So if I was doing my right side, I'd be looking for the same things, not just going up and back, but also kind of adjusting to get different sides of that muscle group, especially for the glutes. Now let's say you can't get your ankle over your knee, that's fine. You can always just do like so, both feet on the ground. Again, just twisting at the torso to get different areas, yeah? So from there, let's say we're moving into the hamstrings. This one's pretty straightforward. However, sometimes people feel like they can't get enough pressure, right, on the hamstrings. Just the weight of the leg or the body weight isn't enough to get there. So there's a couple things we can do here. I mean, obviously you can go with both legs, but for the purposes of just saying we're gonna do one leg, one thing to consider that is something you can use with almost any area we're foam rolling is getting a little lateral motion here too as we're going back and forth. So a little zigzag there. When it comes to tissue mobilization or self-myofascial release, I think is the term that we're looking for, we're gonna be looking to try and get 4 degrees or 4 directions of movement while we're foam rolling. So as you can see, like I said, I'm kind of going back and forth here as I'm going up and down. Now, if you have something at home that you want to add to it, or that you can add to it to make it a little more intense, especially for the hamstrings, you can either grab a dumbbell or a weight and just place that on your lap. So, I just got a 25-pound plate. You can use a 25-pound dumbbell as well. But if you put that right on your leg, you're gonna feel it a lot more, okay? Same principles, kind of going back and forth, side to side, as we're rolling, okay? So that's glutes and hamstrings so far. Now, the natural progression for me is to move sideways, into a side plank here. Hopefully the shoulder's feeling well enough to support you here. If not, we'll have to come up with some more solutions. I'll just roll down here. So what I like to do, and often some foam rollers can be a lot too dense to get into this IT band area or this lateral femur and lateral hip area. And if it's too intense, you're gonna wanna put that top foot in front, use some downward pressure from this top hand, and maybe come up off the elbow. Anything you can do to titrate how much pressure you're putting down on that hip there, okay? So that aside, assuming it's not too sensitive and you're just gonna roll out, we're just looking to get from basically the top of the hip all the way down to the side of the knee, and any way that you can do that. So you can kind of roll all the way up and back, the full length of the leg, or you can kind of just work in segments. So you can kind of start at the top, place the foam roller a little further down, move your way down there. And again, same thing as sort of the glutes, we can also kind of change the pitch of the body here, rolling to try and get different fibers of that same side of the leg there. So also considering sort of moving back and forth, right? So if I kind of show you, take my leg away, kind of zigzagging back and forth, so that way we're getting sort of 4 motions on that tissue, okay? Now, from here, natural progression may be to move down to the calves. Same deal, pretty much the same as the hamstrings, right? But take 1 foot away, that's gonna help you sort of determine how much pressure you wanna put on there. kind of throwing in that zigzag, rolling around here in terms of wanting to get more of this lateral side, the medial side, or the inside, etc. Okay? Now when it comes to the quads, lots of different ways we can attack this. This is another area that people often feel a lot of pressure and it can be too intense sometimes, and that's just gonna come down to your ability to sort of take some of that pressure away using other body parts. So if that was the case, let's say you're just rolling out the quads like so, and it's a little too much, you're gonna wanna take that to the side, put this knee down, or one of the knees down, to kind of help take some pressure off. So now you can see I kind of just take my whole leg off of it, right? And then from there, we can kind of roll out the quads with as much pressure as necessary. So as you can see, got that quad on there. My left knee is supporting some of the weight, so that way it's not too intense. And again, throwing in some of that side to side motion as we're rolling out there, okay? So those are some things to consider while we're foam rolling. Making sure we're getting not only just sort of that linear motion, but a little bit of that zigzag there to really sort of mobilize that tissue a little bit, basically in 4 directions, as well as pitch changing, trying to get different angles, especially with the legs, right? Because we have that whole 360 degrees to try and get around. Now, if we're looking for adductors, which a lot of people enjoy, you kind of have to get a little more up close and personal with the foam roller, where you're starting to position like this. My knee's up at about 90 degrees, right? And then from there, I'm just rolling out to the side, like so. This one's pretty good, especially when we get toward the knee there, okay? And now this is a good opportunity to sort of introduce another method that's kind of called tack and flossing, pin and stretching, which basically, if I apply pressure down here and then I extend my leg, it's gonna take the tissue that's in one point and basically move it past the foam roller and back, And that can help alleviate some knots. It works really good on the quads as well. So if I were to be on the quads, I would basically bend my knee and then roll through, or just bend and extend my knee as I'm rolling back and forth. Similar to what the analogy I like to use is similar to like a dollar bill on the corner of the vending machine. Just kind of trying to get the wrinkles out by pulling it back and forth while we're rolling there. And then for the next ones, we're basically going to go to a very common area, which is just the upper back and then the lats. Something I like to consider here is just supporting the neck, pretty common. But one thing we can also think about is trying to protract the shoulder blades to get sort of the areas right in between the shoulder blades, because if we're kind of retracting them there, you're really going to get a lot of shoulder blade and not as much as that middle back and thoracic area that people are often trying to get relief from. So really working to protract those shoulder blades, and again, pitch changing, right? Just kind of rolling onto the side there as necessary to kind of get that upper back. We don't tend to go to the lower back. It kind of creates a lot more of an arch or lordosis at the lumbar spine, which for some people is just not very well tolerated, so we're not going to go there. Next, the lats and the rotator cuff, or just the ribs. This is a good way to sort of mobilize the ribs. Sometimes if we're feeling pretty stiff in the upper body, the neck and shoulders, sometimes a good thing to do is just kind of get some pressure on the ribs. So as I'm just lying here, if I just relax, it's just pushing those lower ribs up and kind of creating a good amount of pressure here. I mean, I'm feeling it. So that alone can kind of help open up just some upper body mobility, especially if you're feeling rigid in the morning or stiff. Just rolling out the rib cage like so. Again, having different density foam rollers. This one is a pretty standard one. It's a little aggressive for some people. You can use other things, of course, which is a whole nother topic of conversation in terms of density of foam roller and selecting the right one. But for now, just rolling out those lower ribs, good way to kind of mobilize the whole upper body. You'd be surprised how much results you can get from just rolling out the ribs. And then moving a little further up into the armpit, that's gonna get sort of like a large part of the lat and some of the rotator cuff. And same thing here, we can kind of roll back and forth. This one we're not gonna do too much, I guess in the sense we would just call it like linear translation. But for here, we're just gonna change pitch, just rolling back and forth to get some of that stuff. And that can really open up even some overhead mobility, as well as just general sort of shoulder range of motion restoration. So here, and this area can get a little bit sensitive as well. And if you're feeling really good, which I'm not feeling bad now. You can kind of use your legs to move back and forth. So as you can see, some of it takes some coordination, some of it takes a lot on the shoulders. Anytime we're on the side, or anytime we're in this anytime we're on the floor, it can require a lot of the elbows, shoulders, and wrists. So, there's prerequisites to that if you're going to be rolling, as well as just coordination in general. But for now, I think that'll cover out most of the pieces of foam rolling that I would like to go over. If you have any other questions or would like to see any other parts of foam rolling covered, please just let us know in the gym or just throw a comment and we'll get to it. All right, thanks for your time. Good luck with the rolling and let us know how it goes.